Hi, my name's Wayne, founder and owner of Periodic Edibles, and I want to take some time to explain and speak up about what my thoughts are as the business owner and what we're trying to do as a company during these crazy times. And it's amazing to see the protests in multiple cities, not just the city where, George Floyd was murdered, in other countries as well. And we didn't, post on social media right away. We've been silent over the past week or just over a week when, this kind of really started happening and gaining momentum. And I got to be honest, I feel ignorant and uneducated around these types of topics. And, obviously I'm not a Black person, so I don't have that experience of anything political, societal. I don't understand it. I've always been left with 1,000 questions and very few opinions. But this is clearly so big now and important. And we have people reach out and say, what is your stance? How come you haven't said anything? And initially I thought posting on social media is like, I've always felt like, what actions can we do versus just a quick post? I mean, it's kind of easy and cookie cutter to do that. And obviously so many other people are doing so much more. I mean, the countless people that are in the streets, and maybe just doing a fast post, although it's easy, is kind of like speaking up. It's another, someone might scroll through, and the more people that see that, it shows the momentum behind it. But we didn't. So I want to take this and explain a little bit more where we're at, what we're thinking, go over those points. And at the end, a couple thoughts that I haven't heard anyone discuss yet. Around police and those institutions. I don't know if it's still federally illegal, so it's probably not a popular topic, but I got some experiences from my life that I'll share at the end around this. Maybe it could be helpful. It's something I didn't think I'd ever really share, so we'll get into that at the end. Initially, what kind of made me say, like, okay, I need to record a video and at least try to put this out there, was talking to a friend that we were, went for dinner, we're sitting down, and just said, what do you think with everything going on right now? And my response was like, it's crazy. I mean, I don't know. I mean, like, what's going on? What do people do? And it kind of looked at me like, what do you mean you don't know? Like, don't you think it's horrific? Like what happened to George Floyd and countless other Black people and what's been going on? I'm like, yeah, 100%. Like, duh, like, yes, that, I hope that duh doesn't simplify it, but I've always thought that way about those things. With gay people getting married, transgender, it's like, should they be allowed to, or they have equality? I've always thought, duh, like, it doesn't, I think it's very few people that would try to argue against that. So I think we're all in agreement on the root cause of what's going on, whether it's 95%, 99, 99.999, whatever it is, we agree. So I guess I'm thinking like, well, what do people do next? And, it's kind of an excuse, but as a small business owner, working constantly throughout the day and being exhausted at the end, that's why I say I'm uneducated and ignorant, because I don't research these topics, I don't dive into them. And that is an excuse not to be more educated or be proactive about it. So with something this big that clearly needs to be addressed and change is already coming from it, I definitely felt like cut out some time, think about this, and just let, whether this reaches 10 or 100 people, of our customers, whoever it might be, I think this is really important. So from that point, clearly something needs to be done. This is horrific. If you watch that video, it's really hard to watch, and many others like it. So going forward, I don't know. It's the reason why we didn't post is back to like, yes, I feel like everybody agrees on the points and the stance and Black Lives Matter. And then from there, like, I didn't know what I could add or what we could really do as a very small business that doesn't have, we'll talk about different organizations at the end, but even donating a small amount of money, I'm trying to do something. But as I kind of thought about it more and more and was struggling with it, and do we even post about it? Do we remain silent? It's clear that, sitting down here to go over some thoughts on maybe what could be done. And then also my thoughts personally, as I run Periodic Edibles, I'm 100% owner, and everything stems from the top down. So the company, what we're going to decide to do, how we act, really comes from my beliefs as an individual. And so I think being as transparent as possible about those and clarifying them, I hope helps. And I think that's one of the huge problems that I'm seeing right now from my perspective that's limited, make that clear, that it stems from the top down. Like when I see we need change, and I agree 100% with people, and there's already changes being made and there's a lot going on, I'm sure that I'm not aware of. I'm wondering, like, what are the changes to the system? Like, who's the leader? Like, we know the people that did what they did, and finally, we weren't even arrested at first, and the 3 others now taken into custody, and they're gonna, see their day. But who was their boss, and who was above them? And wasn't that cop had like 10 or 8, almost 20 other complaints or offenses or violations? 3 strikes you're out minimum rule, I would think, but who's enforcing that? Who's overseeing that? Again, I'm sure people are working on these systems and how do we change them, but from a government perspective, like, the shit is slow, and it's only changes happen when it's forced. And then at the politician level, that's why I never could even get into it, because I don't even know who to believe, who to trust. It's always these, high level buzzwords, like, we're going to reform justice and it's going to be equality for all, and we're going to put a commission in place that's going to make these changes. And it's easy to write on paper, but the action of implementing and executing it, how does that get done? Like, who's the head of, like, who's the person? Like, what are we doing now? And I don't know, that's, I guess, where I'm at as a business owner and as an individual, is how do these systematic changes get enforced and done? And are we on that path right now? Like, has it been agreed upon? Do more people need to be fired? Because I promise you, this stems, that's clearly why there's so many protests and everyone's behind this. This isn't a one-off event. There's been many events, but even the people that committed the acts aren't the only problem. It's systematic. It's clear. And how do you change a system? It's really hard to change a system with that much influence and power over things and leverage. And for myself, again, I don't have the Black experience, and so I've never experienced a family member or a friend of that, any kind of interaction like that with the cops. And so, again, uneducated, ignorant about it. But if you listen at all to our podcasts or other content, you'll know my background. I'm for the little dog, like the David versus Goliath. It come from money and trying to build a business and all these things. One of the things I'm the most disgusted by and hate the most are the people that are either born into the top, somehow work from the bottom to the top, and then just want to protect their role and forgot, where they came from. But people that protect and cover influence and power, when their day is done, their ideas are defunct, they're old, they're shady. And the only way to keep and hold that influence is by setting up systematic means to oppress, keep people down. Because if this was truly a meritocracy of ideas, where the best idea or the right idea, the way forward, how we should run society, if that idea were to win, this would have changed by now. So someone's still holding that leverage and action isn't being taken. So there's a couple groups I wanted to talk about. We're going to try to work with, look into, see where we can help, and try to cut out more time of our resources to support. And there's 2 main groups, and then I'll talk about that story or a potential idea at the end that might be a little out there. The first one is the Oregon Cannabis Association. This is happening in multiple other states, but there's a push to defund police, and I think it already happened in Minneapolis. And I think that could work in some states. I don't know if it should work in other states, and I don't think that's just the answer to lower budgets and provide less money to the police. One thing I do agree with what the Oregon Cannabis Association is doing is defunding the police from cannabis tax dollars. States are making a lot of money off tax revenue from the newly legalized cannabis industry. The war on drugs, we know, was targeted at minorities and Black individuals, many still in prison for doing something I'm doing legally now. So although I don't agree with just defunding police, thinking that is going to help, and maybe it would help in some states, I do agree that the police shouldn't get any money from cannabis tax revenue. So we're going to put a link below this video, depending on where you're watching. I don't know if this is YouTube, our website, Instagram, to Oregon Cannabis Association. It's really quick. They've set up a really nice system to email. I think it's the mayor and someone in Oregon. And you could, if you're outside of Oregon, look to do this in other states if you're in a legalized state, but really push for not allowing cannabis dollars to go to police departments. And I think 100% be spent on helping improve the communities of minorities and the war on drugs and try to reconcile that as much as possible, if possible. I mean, I don't think you'll never fully reconcile that. The only thing you can do is admit to guilt and try to be as transparent as hell moving forward. Hopefully we start seeing stuff like that in our leaders, because without it, I don't see, I mean, if these systems hold in place, it's only going to get worse and worse. And it's amazing to see how many peaceful protesters and people there are out there in the streets. But quite honestly, the rioting, there's both sides, that those are different groups of people. And I understand the rioting too. I mean, at some point when you're pushed that far into a bad environment, a bad situation, through no fault of your own, and it seems systematic, people, there's been wars in the past for very good reasons. So obviously that's the last thing you want it to come to. So hopefully there are these changes that start to take place. Anyways, check out Oregon Cannabis Association, or if you're in another state, follow their lead on how to reach out and try to move tax revenue from cannabis dollars. That one's huge. The other one, the Last Prisoner Project, check them out. That's mentioned briefly there. So many people of color still in jail and in prison for something I'm doing legally right now. Those people need to be released and take those records off their file and go back out into the world. How do you reconcile that? Someone's spending 10, 20 years in prison. I don't know. But the Last Prisoner Project is working on that. That's another one to check out that you can also donate to, and can be, again, just trying to reconcile whatever possibly we can to correct the rights of the wrongs of our past and try to keep moving forward, redesign society, change systems. And yeah, I don't know. It's a lot. I really struggle to try to communicate and articulate my thoughts because, again, I'm left with a lot of questions and very few opinions about what to do exactly. It's hard, but those ones are big. And then I just wanted to end it with this. And again, we'll just roll with this and see how it goes. I think psilocybin therapy, cops being mandated to do that once a year, could be an amazing thing. I'll share a personal story of why I have this belief. And, psilocybin therapy is still federally illegal. So I don't think anytime soon cops are going to be required to go through this treatment. I don't think it's a full answer either, but I think this could be a section. Maybe it's not even this psilocybin therapy. It's some other treatment therapy system, filter protocol that has to be built into the system, and not only built in on paper, but monitored and enforced. Those two parts are big. It's, pass a law and these are the rules. Nobody follows them. It doesn't really matter. But psilocybin therapy, I think, has major potential. A lot of people are already working on this. We're going to dive in more and look at that group that are working on. Oregon's really leading the way right now, and Colorado as well is pretty far up there on pushing medical use of psilocybin for therapy. And I think it would be a hell of a filter. I think what happened in George Floyd's case and so many of these others, as give a sick individual who lacks empathy, who clearly has no empathy for the person what they're doing these actions to and causing harm and violence and then murder. And I say sick because clearly there's something wrong with that person's thinking or in their mind, and whether it's the way they're raised or if they're raised racist. And like that, it takes generations to get rid of racism because it sticks and then it slowly has to dissolve. And I think these things make it dissolve even faster. But I say sick because who would do that? Back to like my point about, my friend asked me like, what do you think about this? Like, duh, it's bad. Like, yeah. Is anyone arguing it's not? Like, let's go to now what are people doing? How can you change something like this? I mean, that just starts to get overwhelming to me of trying to, think about that. But anyways, I think I missed my point there. But back to psilocybin therapy. I think it would do a couple, empathy and what the actions of this person being sick. From my own personal experience, psilocybin increases empathy a lot, and it might not be for every individual. I don't think it's for every type of person, but I think it'd be a good filter, because if, you look into some of the studies, there's a lot more books being written and major high profile people talking about psilocybin, some talking about LSD, and it's not for everyone. But if you have an individual like a cop or anyone in that kind of enforcement, especially internally in our own country, go through that process. One, it's not going to be for them, which from the studies you look at things may have a compromised emotional state. There's some demons in there that need to be addressed, and maybe they can't be, but if they can't, then that person shouldn't be able to hold a gun. Or they do go through it and they address those demons, and they are, they grow as a person. People, and myself included, they bury things down deep. And when you're in a high stress environment, in no way justifying any of those actions. I call them sick people, and what they did is fucked up. But those things come out. For something was wrong with that person to act in the way they did and murder George Floyd. So some process that can select or filter through that, or at least work and develop empathy into those individuals. I think psilocybin does that. And my personal story, or why I say that, is I think, I've really think back in my life and what are those key events or moments that really had an impact on how I think I developed as a character, or why I have this personality or act the way I do. And to be clear, I don't think I'm a role model or anything, but I think I have done some hard things, starting a business, going off, through school, paying for it myself, and have been in tough situations, but I've always kept trying to do harder and harder things as I keep going on in life. And I was first introduced to psilocybin mushrooms when I was in college. Sophomore was the first time. It wasn't a party. It was a small group of friends. And back then there wasn't any science or books out on it. It wasn't even discussed. Back then, marijuana was still sending you to prison. So, even in that short amount of time, how far we've come, it was eye-opening. You hear a lot of people talk about it. It's ego dissolving. It's hard to articulate sometimes. You can say it a lot of different ways, but I think the one core thing it does is builds empathy. It dissolves your ego, and it makes you look at other people, put yourself in their shoes mentally as much as possible. Whatever it might be, and essentially build empathy, dissolve ego. And that experience is impactful. It lasts for 6-12 months. Even still this day, and when I, in business, I can get stressed. I can start making the wrong decisions. I need to lead people. I need to develop all these different things. If I get stuck in some of those mental spiraling loops, or I feel like I'm in a rut, that's normally what I look to, and with some therapy, to get out of that, change my thinking, change my mindset. And it's always on a spectrum, and it's moving. And I think it's really powerful, and I'm definitely not the first to say this. I also didn't think I'd ever share, using psilocybin and how it's helped me in life. And I think really, without a question, I wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't had those experience or access to psilocybin. Again, people talk about LSD potentially. There's some different options. But if the police had to go through a therapy session doing that, I think it would be hugely impactful. And those are the core things that can start to really shift the mindset of society. And, we could look at the past in the 60s before the internet, when psilocybin and LSD really flooded onto the scene. And there's, we could say, look what happened then. It's not good for society. Or it was good, and the police wanted to lock it down like they did everything else and target minorities. We also didn't have the internet. There weren't books on it, how to use it in therapy versus at a party setting. So I think we're further ahead than we were then. I hope this keeps moving forward, and it's something else we're going to look into and start posting more about. Maybe we'll do some podcasts on neurobiology and mental state and mindset. We do that right now around cannabis and cannabinoids, terpenes. We can start talking about psilocybin as well in there, and having some guests on that focus on that. I'm not sure, but we're going to look into it more. It's kind of a wrap up. I mean, it was a little bit of a ramble. I wanted to share our thoughts, where we're at as a company. People have asked us, they've reached out, and it didn't feel right anymore just not saying anything during this time. And I guess that's all I got to say. I hope definitely check out those organizations. Let me know in the comments or wherever you're watching this if you have any questions, anything's off. Again, I don't, more questions I have than opinions. So if something I said was uneducated or ignorant, let me know. We're adaptable. We're trying to learn. We're trying to grow. For us, it feels like more listening. And, I think you hear white people say that, like, we're trying to listen and learn right now and don't want to take a stance or say anything. I struggle with the answer. It's difficult for me to even sit down and talk about this. So I wanted to put this out. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and check out those organizations that we'll link to. Thank you.